The transport ship Meridian's Edge hummed through hyperspace, carrying its cargo of fresh recruits to the Galactic Defense Academy on Kepler Station. Among the nervous chatter of young beings from dozens of worlds, one figure sat in complete silence. Maya Chen pressed herself against the viewport, watching stars streak past like silver tears against the cosmic void. She had not spoken a single word since boarding 3 days ago. The other cadets had tried, of course. Zephyr, a tall Altarian with crystalline skin that shifted colors with his emotions, had attempted conversation in 12 different languages. Crix, whose insectoid features clicked and chirped when he was excited, had offered to share his collection of Earth music files. Even Mora, the quiet vegan whose telepathic abilities were considered sacred among her people, had approached with genuine concern. Maya simply nodded, smiled politely, and returned to her silence. "Maybe she's mute," whispered Jax, a blue-skinned Rigelian whose voice carried further than he intended. "Some humans have genetic defects that prevent speech." "That's ignorant," Zephyr's skin flashed an angry red. "Humans have technology to fix such conditions. She chooses not to speak, but why?" Crix's mandibles clicked nervously. "Speech is fundamental to social bonding. How will she function in squad-based training?" Maya heard every word, but her expression remained unchanged. She had learned long ago that silence was both shield and weapon. Words could betray you, reveal weaknesses, create vulnerabilities that enemies could exploit. Better to watch, listen, and learn without giving anything away. The Academy's reputation preceded it. Only the best of the best earned placement here, and graduation guaranteed positions in the elite Galactic Defense Corps. For humans, acceptance was particularly difficult. Despite their recent inclusion in the Galactic Council, many species still viewed them as primitive newcomers who had barely mastered interstellar travel. Maya's acceptance letter had arrived with a note that made her stomach clench. Conditional placement pending psychological evaluation and social integration assessment. Translation: they expected her to fail. Commander Thos, a massive Ursinian whose bear-like features intimidated even seasoned veterans, entered the transport's common area. His amber eyes swept over the cadets before settling on Maya. "Cadet Chen," his voice rumbled like distant thunder. "Report to my quarters immediately." The other recruits exchanged glances as Maya rose smoothly and followed the commander. His quarters were spartanly furnished, dominated by a desk covered in holographic displays showing cadet files. Maya's profile glowed prominently on the main screen. "Sit," Thos commanded, not looking up from her file. "Graduated top of your class from the Sol Defense Academy. Perfect scores in tactical analysis, weapons proficiency, and survival training. Recommendations from 5 senior instructors." He finally looked at her. "Yet not one mentions your communication skills. In fact, they note your preference for silent observation." Maya sat straight-backed, hands folded, meeting his gaze without flinching. "The Academy requires teamwork. Cadet, you cannot lead or follow effectively without communication. Your species may be new to galactic civilization, but surely you understand basic social interaction." Still silence. Thos leaned back, studying her. "I've read the incident reports from your preliminary training. 17 combat simulations, 17 victories. You completed the Vorthan maze in record time without speaking to your team members once. Somehow they followed your lead anyway." A ghost of a smile touched Maya's lips, so brief it might have been imagination. "The other instructors think you're damaged goods," Thos continued. "They want to send you back to Earth before training begins. But I've seen warriors from 100 worlds, and I recognize something in you that they missed." He stood and moved to the viewport, watching hyperspace flow past. "My people have a saying, still waters hide the deepest currents. Perhaps your silence speaks louder than their chatter." Maya tilted her head slightly, the first significant movement she had made during the conversation. "You'll be assigned to Alpha Squadron," Thos said. "Your teammates are the best we have. Don't disappoint them, and more importantly, don't disappoint yourself." As Maya stood to leave, Thos added quietly, "Whatever happened to make you choose silence, cadet? Remember that healing sometimes requires more courage than staying wounded." Maya paused at the door, her hand on the control panel. For a moment, Thos thought she might speak, might offer some explanation or acknowledgement. Instead, she simply nodded once and left. Returning to the common area, Maya found her fellow cadets preparing for sleep cycle. The ship's lights had dimmed to simulate night, and most had retreated to their bunks. Only Zephyr remained awake, his skin now a soft blue that indicated deep thought. "The commander kept you a long time," he said as she passed. "We were worried." Maya stopped, surprised by the genuine concern in his voice. She looked at him for a long moment, seeing past his alien features to something familiar. Loneliness, the weight of expectations, the fear of not belonging. She reached into her pack and withdrew a small device, a holographic projector her sister had given her before she left Earth. With quick fingers, she activated it, and suddenly the air filled with images of her home. Rolling green hills, a small farmhouse, a family gathered around a dinner table laughing. Zephyr's skin shifted to warm yellow, wonder and appreciation. "Earth," he whispered. "It's beautiful." Maya nodded, then touched the projector again. The scene changed to show a young girl, perhaps 8 years old, running through a field with arms outstretched, laughing silently at the sky. The girl looked exactly like Maya, but her eyes held a light that the current Mayas did not. "You had a happy childhood," Zephyr observed. Maya's finger hovered over the projector's controls. She could show him more, could reveal the later images, the ones that explained everything. Instead, she switched it off and carefully packed it away. "Thank you for sharing," Zephyr said softly. "I understand now why you keep your words precious. Some things are too important for casual conversation." As Maya prepared for sleep, she found herself thinking about Thos's words about courage and healing. Tomorrow they would reach Kepler Station, and her real test would begin. She had spent years perfecting the art of silence, but perhaps it was time to consider what lay beyond it. In the darkness of her bunk, Maya whispered a single word so quietly that even she could barely hear it. "Maybe." Kepler Station sprawled across space like a metallic city, its rotating sections generating artificial gravity for the thousands of beings who called it home. The Galactic Defense Academy occupied the station's northern quadrant, a maze of training facilities, classrooms, and dormitories designed to forge the galaxy's finest warriors. Maya Chen stood in formation with her new squadron, Alpha Team watching their drill instructor pace before them like a predator selecting prey. Sergeant Vex was a Thrakari, his reptilian features marked by scars that spoke of countless battles. His yellow eyes missed nothing as they swept over the assembled cadets. "Alpha Squadron," he hissed, his forked tongue flicking out to taste their fear. 5 beings from 5 different worlds thrown together and expected to function as one unit. "Statistically, half of you will wash out within the first month." Maya remained perfectly still while her teammates shifted nervously. To her left stood Zephyr, his crystalline skin cycling through nervous purples. Beside him, Crix's mandibles clicked in an anxiety pattern Maya had learned to recognize. On her right, Mora's large, dark eyes remained fixed forward, while the 5th member of their team, a hulking Gorvanian named Thane, breathed heavily through his tusked snout. "Your first exercise begins now," Vex announced. "The Crucible, a combat simulation that will test not just your individual skills but your ability to function as a unit." His gaze lingered on Maya. "Communication failures result in mission failures. Mission failures result in death." The simulation chamber materialized around them, transforming into a war-torn cityscape under an alien sky. Enemy positions flickered to life as holographic soldiers took cover behind rubble and burned-out vehicles. The scenario was brutally simple. Reach the extraction point while neutralizing all hostile forces. "Begin." Vex's voice echoed from hidden speakers. Immediately, the team scattered to cover as simulated weapons fire erupted around them. Zephyr began calling out tactical observations, his words rapid and precise. Crix responded with clicking affirmatives while Mora used her telepathic abilities to scout enemy positions. Thane simply charged forward, his massive frame absorbing hits that would have dropped smaller beings. Maya moved like a shadow, flowing from cover to cover without sound. She assessed the battlefield in seconds, identifying 3 key choke points and 2 elevated sniper positions. Her teammates were skilled but uncoordinated, each fighting their own battle instead of working together. A holographic enemy appeared behind Zephyr, weapon trained on his back. Maya moved without thinking, her training knife whistling through the air to strike the simulation's weak point. The enemy dissolved as Zephyr spun around, his skin flashing grateful gold. "Behind you," he started to say, but Maya was already gone, flowing toward the next threat. The simulation adapted, spawning more enemies as the team struggled to advance. Mora's telepathic warnings came too late. Crix's enthusiasm led him into an ambush. Thane's brute force approach left the team's flanks exposed. They were losing badly. Maya found herself in an elevated position overlooking the battlefield. From here, she could see the solution clearly. A coordinated assault on 3 specific targets that would collapse the enemy's defensive line. But implementing it required precise timing and absolute trust between team members. She reached for her communicator, then stopped. Speaking now would mark her as just another cadet struggling to adapt, but remaining silent would mean watching her team fail. The choice crystallized as she watched Thane go down under concentrated fire, his massive form flickering as the simulation registered his death. Mora cried out telepathically, her distress flooding the mental channels. They had perhaps 30 seconds before complete mission failure. Maya made her decision. Moving with fluid grace, she appeared beside each teammate in turn. To Zephyr, she pointed at the leftmost sniper nest and held up 2 fingers, 2 grenades timed throw. His skin flashed understanding. To Crix, she indicated the central bunker and mimed a flanking maneuver. His mandibles clicked agreement. To Mora, she touched her own temple and pointed at the rightmost position. Telepathic overload to disable their communications. No words passed between them, but something deeper than speech connected the team. Maya's silence had taught her to communicate in ways that transcended language. Posture, gesture, the precise timing of movement that spoke volumes. She raised her hand, fingers counting down, 3, 2, 1. The assault began with perfect synchronization. Zephyr's grenades sailed through the air in precise arcs, their explosions masking Crix's rapid advance. Mora's telepathic assault created confusion in the enemy ranks just as Maya descended from above, her weapons finding their marks with surgical precision. In less than 60 seconds, the simulation was over. The cityscape dissolved, replaced by the sterile walls of the training chamber. Sergeant Vex stood motionless, his yellow eyes unreadable. Impossible, he muttered, consulting his tactical display. Final time, 3 minutes, 47 seconds. 0 casualties after initial loss. He looked up at the team. The previous record was 7 minutes, 15 seconds with 30% casualties. Thane's form rematerialized as the simulation reset his status. He looked confused, having missed the final assault entirely. What happened? How did we? Chen happened. Zephyr's skin glowed with admiration. She coordinated the entire final phase without speaking a word. Vex approached Maya slowly, his scarred features thoughtful. Explain your strategy, cadet. Maya straightened, meeting his gaze. Around her, the team waited expectantly. She could feel their curiosity, their growing respect, their desire to understand how she had pulled victory from certain defeat. She remained silent. Vex's lips curved in what might have been a smile on a less reptilian face. I see. Some lessons are best taught through demonstration rather than explanation. He turned to address the full team. You will run this simulation again tomorrow, and the day after, until you can achieve the same result consistently. As they filed out of the training chamber, Mora approached Maya hesitantly. Her telepathic abilities made her more sensitive to emotional undercurrents than the others. I felt something during the assault, she said quietly. Not words, but to a purpose, absolute clarity of intent. Is that how you always think? Maya considered the question. Her silence had indeed taught her to think differently, to process information without the filter of internal dialogue that most beings took for granted. She nodded slowly. Remarkable, Mora whispered. Your mind is like still water, perfectly clear and utterly calm. No wonder you see solutions others miss. That evening, Maya sat alone in the observatory deck, watching stars wheel past the station's windows. The rest of Alpha Squadron had gone to the recreational areas, celebrating their unexpected victory. She preferred the quiet. Footsteps approached, and she looked up to see Commander Thos. The massive Ursinian settled into a nearby chair with surprising grace for his size. Sergeant Vex filed an interesting report, he said without preamble. He believes you may be the most naturally gifted tactical mind he's encountered. In 20 years of training, Maya turned back to the stars. He also noted that your team's performance improved dramatically after you took unofficial command. They follow you without question despite never hearing your voice. Thos leaned forward. That's not just unusual, cadet. It's almost impossible. A long silence stretched between them, comfortable rather than tense. Tomorrow brings new challenges, Thoth said finally. More complex simulations, psychological evaluations, and the first real test of interspecies cooperation. Your silence has served you well so far, but the Academy will push you in ways you cannot anticipate. He stood to leave, then paused. Whatever shaped you into who you are today, remember that strength can become weakness if held too rigidly. Even diamonds can shatter under the right pressure. Maya remained in the observatory long after he left, contemplating his words. In the reflection of the window, she saw not just her own face but ghostly images of her past, memories she had worked so hard to bury beneath layers of silence and self-control. Tomorrow would indeed bring new challenges. And perhaps, she thought with something approaching fear, it might finally bring the test that would break her carefully constructed walls. The Academy's Psychological Evaluation Center felt deliberately intimidating, with its white walls and sterile lighting designed to strip away pretense and reveal hidden truths. Maya sat across from Dr. Kellen Vrix, the station's chief psychologist, whose 4 arms and multifaceted eyes marked him as one of the Nexari species known for their analytical minds. Fascinating, Dr. Vrix murmured, his lower hands taking notes while his upper hands manipulated holographic brain scans. Your neural patterns show remarkable activity in the prefrontal cortex, the area associated with planning and decision-making. Yet your speech centers remain almost dormant. Maya watched him work, noting how his different arms moved independently, each performing separate tasks with perfect coordination. It reminded her of her own ability to process multiple streams of information simultaneously. I've reviewed your Academy entrance examinations, he continued. Written responses were eloquent and insightful. Clearly you possess advanced language capabilities, yet you choose not to utilize them verbally. His multifaceted eyes focused on her with unsettling intensity. This suggested deliberate psychological adaptation rather than any physiological limitation. A soft chime indicated the arrival of another participant. Maya tensed as Commander Thoth entered, followed by a human woman she didn't recognize. The stranger wore civilian clothes but carried herself with military bearing, her silver hair pulled back in a regulation style that spoke of decades in service. Dr. Vrix, Thoth nodded to the psychologist. This is Admiral Sarah Mitchell, Director of Human Defense Corps Integration. She's requested to observe today's session. Admiral Mitchell studied Maya with knowing eyes. At ease, cadet. I'm here as an advocate, not an interrogator. Something in the Admiral's tone made Maya's carefully controlled pulse quicken. There was familiarity there, a recognition that went beyond mere professional interest. Now then, Dr. Vrix resumed, let's begin with standard association protocols. I'll display various scenarios, and you'll indicate your tactical responses through the interface. The first series of scenarios appeared as holograms: urban warfare, space combat, hostage situations. Maya's responses came quickly and decisively, her tactical choices consistently unconventional but effective. She consistently chose solutions that minimized casualties while achieving objectives through misdirection rather than brute force. Intriguing, Dr. Vrix noted. Your strategies show a pattern of protective thinking. You prioritize the safety of others even when more aggressive approaches might be tactically superior. The scenarios became more complex, introducing moral ambiguities and impossible choices. Maya's responses remained swift, but Admiral Mitchell's expression grew increasingly troubled. Doctor, the Admiral interrupted as a particularly brutal scenario concluded. Perhaps we should discuss the psychological framework you're using here. Standard Academy protocols, Dr. Vrix replied. We must understand how each cadet responds under extreme pressure. Show her the Morandi incident, Admiral Mitchell said quietly. Maya's blood froze. The holographic interface flickered and reformed, displaying a scenario she knew all too well. A colonial outpost under attack, civilians trapped, rescue forces pinned down by superior firepower. She had lived this nightmare, not as a simulation but as horrific reality. Interesting choice, Admiral, Dr. Vrix said, unaware of the tension crackling in the room. This historical scenario is typically reserved for advanced psychological evaluation. The Morandi colony massacre remains one of the most studied tactical failures in recent military history. Maya's hands clenched in her lap as the scenario unfolded. She watched holographic representations of events burned into her memory. The surprise attack, the overwhelming enemy force, the desperate choices made by a young defense coordinator who had been forced to choose between impossible alternatives. The scenario requires tactical decisions with incomplete information. Dr. Vrix continued manipulating the display. Enemy forces have civilians hostages in multiple locations. Rescue attempts will certainly result in casualties. Yet inaction guarantees total loss of life. The interface awaited Maya's input. 3 options appeared: aggressive assault with high civilian casualties, defensive positioning that would allow enemy escape, or a third option marked simply as alternative solution. Maya stared at the display, her breathing carefully controlled. 5 years ago, faced with this exact situation, she had chosen the alternative solution. She had broken protocol, ignored orders, and improvised a plan that saved hundreds of lives. She had also spoken for the first time in months, coordinating a desperate defense that turned certain defeat into miraculous victory. The cost of that victory had been everything she once was. "Cadet Chen?" Dr. Vrix prompted. "Your tactical assessment?" Maya's finger hovered over the interface. Around her, the room fell silent. She could feel Admiral Mitchell's tension, Commander Thas's confusion, Dr. Vrix's clinical curiosity. They were waiting for her to relive the worst day of her life. Instead, she stood and walked to the door. "Cadet," Dr. Vrix called. "The evaluation is not complete." Maya paused with her hand on the door controls. Without turning around, she spoke her first words since arriving at the academy. Her voice rusty from disuse but clear. "Some prices are too high to pay twice." The door sealed behind her, leaving 3 stunned officials in her wake. Maya found herself in the academy's arboretum, a vast greenhouse that housed plant life from dozens of worlds. The artificial sunlight and growing things provided a stark contrast to the sterile evaluation chambers. She settled on a bench beneath a towering earth oak, one of the few things from her homeworld that grew in the communal garden. Footsteps approached, and she looked up to see Admiral Mitchell walking slowly between the plant beds. The older woman's expression was sad, but not surprised. "You know who I am," Maya said. It wasn't a question. "Admiral Sarah Mitchell, formerly Captain Sarah Mitchell of the UES Defiant," the Admiral replied, settling beside her on the bench. "I was part of the relief force that arrived at Mirandi Colony. Too late to help, but in time to witness the aftermath of your miracle." Maya's jaw tightened. There was no miracle, just luck and desperation. A 17-year-old civilian defense coordinator organizing the evacuation of 12,000 colonists while under siege by Krillian raiders. Admiral Mitchell countered, turning a communications array into a weapon. Convincing the enemy you had reinforcements when you had nothing but volunteers with hunting rifles. If that wasn't a miracle, it was the next best thing. "It wasn't supposed to be me," Maya whispered. "Colonel Rodriguez was the defense coordinator. When he fell in the first attack, command defaulted to his second. When she died, it went to the communications officer. I was just the backup's backup. But you were the one who stepped up when everyone else fell." Maya stood abruptly, pacing to the far edge of the garden where a small waterfall created gentle music against synthetic stones. "Do you know what happened after? After the news crews left and the heroes' ceremonies ended?" Admiral Mitchell's silence was answer enough. "Internal inquiry," Maya continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "How did a teenager with no formal training coordinate a defense that 3 senior officers had failed to organize? They wanted to know if I'd had inside information, if my family had connections to the raiders, if I'd somehow planned the entire attack. Maya, 6 months of investigations, testimony from every survivor, analysis of every communication, psychological evaluations that made today's session look gentle." Maya's hands shook as memories flooded back. "They cleared me eventually. Officially, I was a hero. Unofficially, I was the girl who knew too much, who acted too quickly, who somehow turned disaster into victory when seasoned officers couldn't." Admiral Mitchell rose and approached carefully, as if Maya were a wounded animal that might bolt at any sudden movement. "The suspicion followed me everywhere," Maya continued. "New schools, new cities, even new planets. The girl from Mirandi, the one with questions in her past, speaking became a liability. Every word was analyzed, every suggestion questioned. So I stopped speaking altogether." "Is that why you joined the academy? To escape?" Maya turned back to face the Admiral, her eyes bright with unshed tears. I joined because someone needs to make sure what happened at Mirandi never happens again. That colonies aren't left defenseless. That backup plans exist for the backup plans. Admiral Mitchell nodded slowly. And you think silence will protect you from scrutiny here? Silence protects everyone, Maya replied. It prevents misunderstandings, reduces conflicts, eliminates the chance of saying the wrong thing at the wrong time. It also prevents you from being the leader you were born to be. They stood in contemplative silence as artificial rain began to fall in the garden, nourishing the plants from a dozen worlds that somehow thrive together in this manufactured ecosystem. Dr. Vrix will file his report, Admiral Mitchell said eventually. He'll recommend psychological counseling, extended observation, possibly even dismissal from the program. Maya's shoulders sagged. She had known this moment would come eventually. However, the Admiral continued, I'll be filing my own report about a young woman whose tactical brilliance and protective instincts make her exactly what the galaxy needs right now, about how true leadership sometimes requires silence as much as speech. Maya looked up, surprised. The Academy will test you in ways you can't imagine, Admiral Mitchell warned. Your past will become present. Your silence will be challenged, and eventually you'll face a choice between protecting yourself and protecting others. When that moment comes, remember that heroism isn't about being perfect. It's about doing what's necessary regardless of the cost. As the Admiral departed, Maya remained in the garden, watching raindrops bead on alien flowers while processing the conversation. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new tests, new opportunities for her carefully constructed defenses to crumble. But for the first time since arriving at Kepler Station, she found herself wondering if perhaps it was time to stop running from her past and start preparing for whatever future awaited beyond the silence. The Academy's advanced combat simulation chamber hummed with anticipation as Alpha Squadron prepared for their most challenging exercise yet. Maya stood with her teammates before a massive holographic display showing their mission parameters. A hostage rescue operation on a heavily fortified asteroid mining station. This is it, Sergeant Vex announced, his reptilian features grave. Final examination before advancement to specialized training tracks. Success means you continue in the program. Failure means immediate discharge. Maya felt her teammates' tension like a physical weight. Over the past weeks, they had grown into a cohesive unit, learning to work together despite their vastly different backgrounds and communication styles. Zephyr's skin had settled into confident blues and golds when working with the team. Crix's clicking had evolved into a complex rhythm that conveyed tactical information. Mora's telepathic abilities had learned to filter and focus rather than overwhelm. Even Thane had developed a surprising tactical awareness beneath his brutish exterior. But today felt different. Today, other instructors watched from the observation deck, their evaluations determining not just individual fates, but the future of interspecies cooperation programs. Enemy force composition: 47 armed hostiles, mixed species. Vex continued. Civilian casualties: 36 miners, families, and station personnel. Mission timeline: 45 minutes before enemy reinforcements arrive. The simulation materialized around them, transforming the chamber into the cramped corridors and industrial machinery of an asteroid mining facility. Emergency lights cast eerie shadows while the distant sound of drilling equipment created an ominous backdrop. Begin, Vex commanded. Alpha Squadron moved with practiced efficiency, Maya taking point despite never officially being designated team leader. Her teammates had learned to read her subtle signals, understanding that her tactical assessments were invariably correct. The first phase went smoothly. They neutralized perimeter guards, disabled security systems, and established communication with the trapped civilians. Maya's strategy divided the team into complementary pairs, Zephyr and Crix handling technical systems while she and Mora focused on threat elimination. Thane served as mobile support, his strength valuable for breaching fortified positions. But as they penetrated deeper into the facility, Maya began to notice discrepancies. Enemy patrol patterns were too predictable. Civilian locations were suspiciously convenient. The tactical situation felt familiar in a way that made her increasingly uneasy. Something's wrong, Mora whispered, her telepathic abilities picking up Maya's growing concern. The scenario feels constructed, Maya nodded grimly. She had experienced enough real combat to recognize when a simulation had been designed for specific purposes, rather than realistic training. This wasn't just an examination. It was a test tailored specifically for her. Her suspicions were confirmed when they reached the facility's central hub. The layout was identical to Mirandi Colony's command center, down to the placement of communication arrays and defensive positions. Even the scattered debris and emergency lighting matched her memories with disturbing precision. Maya, Zephyr's skin flickered with confusion as he noticed her sudden stillness. What's our next move? The tactical situation was a nightmare parallel to that day 5 years ago. Hostiles controlled 3 key positions, civilian casualties were mounting, and time was running out. The correct solution would require sacrificing some civilians to save others. Exactly the choice she had faced as a teenager with too much responsibility and too few options. Maya closed her eyes, feeling the weight of her teammates' trust. They were looking to her for leadership, just as the Mirandi colonists had. But this time, she had allies who believed in her rather than investigators waiting to dissect her every decision. New plan, she said quietly, speaking aloud for the first time during the exercise. Her teammates started at the sound of her voice, but their training kicked in immediately. They gathered around as Maya quickly outlined a radically different approach, one that prioritized coordination and timing over brute force. That's incredibly risky, Crix clicked nervously. If we're even slightly off tempo, we won't be, Maya interrupted, her voice gaining strength. Zephyr, I need you to overload their communication grid exactly 17 seconds after Mora begins her telepathic assault. Crix, your demolition charges go off at the 20-second mark, not before. Thane, you're our anchor. When everything goes to hell, you hold the center and protect the civilians. And you? Mora asked. Maya checked her weapons one final time. I'm going to do what I should have done 5 years ago. Trust my team instead of trying to carry everything alone. The assault began with Mora's telepathic confusion wave, sending enemy forces into disarray. Exactly 17 seconds later, Zephyr's technical wizardry blacked out their communications. Crix's precisely timed explosions created strategic choke points, while Thane's protective fire kept civilians safe during the chaos. Maya moved through the facility like a force of nature. But unlike at Mirandi, she wasn't fighting alone. Her teammates anticipated her needs, covered her movements, and executed their roles with absolute precision. When enemy reinforcements appeared earlier than expected, the team adapted seamlessly, their weeks of training together paying off in perfect coordination. The simulation ended with all civilians rescued, enemy forces neutralized, and 0 friendly casualties. The holographic facility dissolved, revealing the training chamber's stark walls and the shocked faces of observing instructors. Sergeant Vex approached slowly, his yellow eyes unreadable. Final time 31 minutes 14 seconds. 0 casualties, all objectives achieved. He paused, consulting his datapad. This is the first time in Academy history that this particular scenario has been completed with a perfect score. From the observation deck, Maya could see Admiral Mitchell and Commander Thos watching intently. But it was Dr. Vrix whose expression caught her attention. The Nexari psychologist looked deeply troubled. Outstanding performance, Alpha Squadron, Vex continued. You are cleared for advancement to specialized training tracks. Dismissed. As her teammates celebrated around her, Maya remained focused on the observation deck. She had passed the test, but something about the exercise still bothered her. The scenario had been too perfectly crafted, too specifically designed to trigger her memories of Mirandi. Later that evening, Maya found herself once again in the Academy's Arboretum, seeking peace among the growing things. She wasn't surprised when Dr. Vrix appeared, his 4 arms carrying a portable holographic projector. Cadet Chen, he greeted formally. I believe we need to finish our conversation. The psychological evaluation was completed weeks ago, Maya replied, not looking up from the earth flowers she had been tending. Not that conversation. Dr. Vrix activated his projector, filling the space around them with familiar images. The one about why the Academy's most challenging scenario was based on classified military records from the Mirandi colony incident. Maya's hand stilled among the flower petals. I don't know what you mean. The simulation you just completed was not standard Academy curriculum, Dr. Vrix explained patiently. It was a custom scenario built from detailed after-action reports, survivor testimonies, and tactical analyses of the Mirandi defense. Someone wanted to see how you would handle facing your past in a controlled environment. The implications hit Maya like a physical blow. Someone's been watching me. Testing me. Admiral Mitchell requested the scenario, Dr. Vrix confirmed. She wanted to observe how you would function when confronted with a tactical situation identical to your formative trauma. Your performance was illuminating. Maya stood abruptly, anger flashing in her eyes. She used my team as unknowing participants in her psychological experiment. Your team succeeded brilliantly because you finally trusted them with the truth, Dr. Vrix pointed out. For the first time since arriving at the academy, you spoke during a mission. You shared your tactical thinking. You functioned as part of a unit rather than a lone operator. She had no right. She had every right, Dr. Vrix interrupted gently, because she knew what you've been hiding from yourself. The reason you chose silence wasn't to protect others from your past. It was to protect yourself from having to trust others again. Maya sank back onto the bench, her carefully constructed defenses finally crumbling. At Mirandi, I made decisions that got people killed. Good people, brave people who trusted me to save them. And you also made decisions that saved thousands of lives. The cost was too high. Dr. Vrix settled beside her, his multiple eyes reflecting genuine compassion. The cost of leadership is always high. Cadet, the question is whether you'll let that cost paralyze you or teach you to value the lives you're fighting to protect. They sat in silence as artificial evening settled over the arboretum. Around them, plants from dozens of worlds grew together in harmony, each contributing something unique to the shared ecosystem. Admiral Mitchell believes you're destined for command, Dr. Vrix said eventually. Commander Thoss sees tactical brilliance that could reshape military doctrine. Sergeant Vex thinks you're the finest natural leader he's encountered in 2 decades of training. And what do you think? Maya asked. The Academy's emergency alert system screamed through the corridors at 347 hours, dragging Maya from restless sleep, filled with dreams of organic starships and watching eyes. Red lights bathed the dormitory as her fellow Alpha Squadron members scrambled into their gear with practiced efficiency. All cadets report to emergency stations. Commandant Zaris's telepathic voice cut through the chaos. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Maya's blood ran cold. In her months at the academy, they had run countless simulations and practiced scenarios. But never had the commandant's mental voice carried such urgency, such barely controlled fear. Zephyr's skin cycled through rapid patterns of silver and red, confusion mixed with alarm. What could trigger a station-wide emergency? Kepler Station has defensive systems that could repel a fleet. Maybe that's the problem. Crix clicked nervously, his mandibles chattering with anxiety. Maybe someone's brought a fleet. Alpha Squadron reached their designated emergency station, Tactical Observation Center 7, to find it packed with senior cadets from multiple squadrons. The massive holographic displays showed long-range sensor readings that made Maya's stomach clench with recognition. Ships, hundreds of them, approaching from the galactic rim in formations that defied conventional military doctrine. The vessels matched no known species design templates, their organic curves and bioluminescent patterns identical to the derelict ship from their recent simulation. Status report, Sergeant Vex demanded as he entered the center, his reptilian features grim. All squadrons accounted for? Present and ready, Maya found herself responding, her voice cutting through the nervous chatter of dozens of cadets. The authority in her tone surprised even her, but somehow it felt natural to take charge in a crisis. Commander Thoss arrived with Admiral Mitchell and Dr. Vrix close behind. The massive Ursinian's amber eyes swept over the assembled cadets before settling on the tactical displays. The fleet was detected 4 hours ago by deep space monitors, he announced without preamble. Initial estimates suggest over 300 vessels of unknown configuration approaching at sublight speeds. They're not trying to hide, Admiral Mitchell added, studying the sensor data. Their approach vector will bring them directly to Kepler Station in approximately 18 hours. Maya stepped forward, her tactical mind racing. Permission to speak freely, sir? Commander Thoss nodded grimly. Granted, Cadet. The ship configurations match the vessel from our recent simulation, Maya said, her voice carrying clearly through the center. If these are the same entities that have been observing galactic conflicts for years, their arrival now isn't coincidental. Explain, Admiral Mitchell demanded. Maya approached the central display, highlighting specific formations in the approaching fleet. The simulation ship contained historical records of defensive actions across the galaxy. It was studying how different species respond to overwhelming threats. This fleet isn't arriving randomly. They're responding to something specific, Dr. Vrix's multiple eyes focused intently on Maya. What kind of threat would require the intervention of entities that have remained hidden for decades? Before Maya could respond, new contacts appeared on the long-range sensors. Ships emerging from hyperspace at the galaxy's edge, their sleek angular designs radiating malevolent purpose. Even through the sterile sensor displays, their presence felt wrong. Predatory vessels built for conquest rather than exploration. My God, Admiral Mitchell whispered. How many are there? The tactical computer struggled to process the incoming data as more ships continued emerging from hyperspace. Thousands of vessels, then tens of thousands, forming attack formations that dwarfed anything in recorded military history. The unknown fleet just altered course, reported a senior cadet monitoring communications. They're moving to intercept the newcomers rather than approaching our station. Maya studied the tactical display, her mind processing patterns and possibilities with the clarity that had served her at Mirandi Colony. They're not invaders, she said suddenly. The organic ships, they're defenders. Defending against what? Commander Thoss asked. Against them. Maya pointed to the angular fleet still emerging from hyperspace. Look at their formation patterns, their approach vectors. Those ships are designed for planetary bombardment and population elimination. They're not here to conquer. They're here to exterminate. The observation center fell silent as the implications sank in. On the displays, the two fleets continued their convergence, with Kepler Station and its thousands of inhabitants caught directly between them. Estimated time to engagement? Admiral Mitchell asked. 14 hours at current speeds, Vex replied. The battle will occur within visual range of the station. Maya found herself thinking of the images she had seen in the organic ship's memory chambers. Desperate defenses on dozens of worlds. Heroes forged in impossible circumstances. The price of survival measured in lives lost and innocence destroyed. We need to evacuate the station, she said. Impossible, Commander Thoss replied. Kepler Station houses over 2 million beings. Our evacuation capabilities can handle perhaps 10,000 in the time available. Then we need to fight, Maya said quietly. Admiral Mitchell's expression was grim. Cadet, this is a training facility. We have defensive systems adequate for dealing with pirates or raiders, not fleets numbering in the thousands. Not we, Maya clarified, her voice growing stronger. Them, the organic ships. They've been watching us, learning from us, studying how we respond to impossible odds. They know what we're capable of. She turned to address the assembled cadets, seeing fear and confusion in dozens of alien faces. These were the galaxy's finest young minds, trained for leadership and tactical excellence, but none had expected to face actual warfare during their education. Every species represented here has stories of heroes who stood against impossible odds, Maya continued. Humans have their legends of last stands and desperate victories. Altarians speak of crystal warriors who held mountain passes against endless enemies. Thrakari tell tales of clutch defenders who protected their young from extinction. Zephyr's skin began shifting to determined golds and blues. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that maybe we're here for a reason, Maya said. Maybe our training, our cooperation, our ability to work together despite our differences. Maybe that's exactly what this moment requires. Dr. Vrix stepped forward, his analytical mind processing Maya's words. You believe the timing is significant, that the Academy's emphasis on interspecies cooperation was preparation for this specific threat. Maya nodded. The organic ships have been watching us for years. They've seen how we fight, how we adapt, how we survive. If they're willing to reveal themselves and engage this threat, it's because they believe we're ready to help. Help how? Admiral Mitchell asked. We're cadets, not seasoned warriors. At Mirandi Colony, I was a 17-year-old communications technician, Maya replied. But when the moment came, I did what needed to be done. Everyone in this room has been trained for leadership, for making impossible decisions under extreme pressure. Maybe it's time to find out what we're really capable of. Commander Thoth studied the tactical displays, then looked at the assembled cadets. What exactly are you proposing, Cadet Chen? Maya approached the central console, her fingers dancing over the controls as she highlighted specific elements of the approaching fleets. The organic ships are outnumbered 3-1, but they have superior technology and defensive capabilities. The angular ships rely on overwhelming force and coordinated assault patterns. She zoomed in on the projected battle zone. If we can provide tactical coordination between the organic defenders and any available allied forces in the region, we might be able to turn their numerical advantage against them. Allied forces? Vex questioned. Maya's fingers brought up regional star charts highlighting patrol routes and defensive positions throughout the sector. Every major species maintains security forces in this region. If we can coordinate their response, combine their strengths with the organic ship's capabilities. You're talking about commanding a multi-species battle fleet, Admiral Mitchell said slowly. Coordinating tactics between forces that have never worked together, using communication protocols that don't exist. Yes, Maya said simply. Just like we've been training to do. The observation center erupted in discussions as senior cadets began analyzing Maya's proposal. Some argued it was impossible, others that it was their duty to try. Through it all, Maya stood calmly at the center console, studying the tactical situation with the same focused intensity she had brought to every academy simulation. But this time, the stakes weren't grades or advancement opportunities. This time, the price of failure would be measured in species and civilizations rather than individual lives. Commandant Xeris has been monitoring our discussion, Commander Thoth announced as the ancient vegan's presence filled the center. She's authorized us to proceed with emergency protocols. The Academy's communication array will be placed at your disposal. The Commandant's telepathic voice reached every cadet simultaneously. Senior staff will coordinate with regional defense forces while cadet squadrons develop tactical scenarios. The Academy's main command center had been transformed into a war room, with holographic displays showing the approaching fleets in terrifying detail. Maya stood at the central tactical station, her voice coordinating between a dozen different species' defense forces as the moment of truth approached. Altarian crystal ships. Maintain defensive formation Beta 7, she called out, her commands being translated and transmitted across the galaxy. Thrakari fast attack squadrons. Prepare for hit-and-run tactics on my mark. 6 hours had passed since the emergency began, and Maya had somehow found herself at the center of the largest interspecies military coordination in galactic history. Her academy training and tactical analysis had proven invaluable, but more importantly, her experience at Morandi Colony had taught her how to remain calm when everything seemed hopeless. Admiral Mitchell approached, her expression mixing pride and concern. Status report, Cadet. 37 different species have responded to our coordination requests, Maya replied, not taking her eyes off the tactical displays. Total Allied force strength, approximately 800 vessels of various classes. The Organic Defender Fleet maintains 400 ships with superior technology, against nearly 15,000 enemy vessels, Admiral Mitchell noted grimly. Maya nodded. The numbers aren't good, but numbers aren't everything. The enemy fleet relies on overwhelming force and standardized tactics. Our advantage is adaptability and coordination between diverse fighting styles. Zephyr approached from the communications station, his skin cycling through urgent patterns of blue and silver. Maya, we're receiving a transmission from the organic fleet. It seems different. Different how? It's not electromagnetic or quantum-based. Crix clicked excitedly, his mandibles working rapidly. The signal appears to be transmitted directly into our consciousness, similar to vegan telepathy but more sophisticated. Mora, who had been serving as telepathic liaison with various defense forces, suddenly straightened. They're trying to establish contact specifically with you, Maya. The transmission is focused on your neural signature. Maya felt a familiar pressure at the edges of her consciousness, similar to what she had experienced in the simulation but stronger, more purposeful. Put it through to the main display. The holographic projectors flickered, then resolved into an image that made everyone in the command center gasp. The being that appeared was humanoid but clearly not human, with elongated features and eyes that held depths of intelligence and sadness that seemed to span millennia. Maya Chen of Earth, The being's voice spoke directly into their minds. "We have watched your species with great interest. You show promise. Who are you?" Maya asked aloud, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. "We are the Guardians, the last remnant of a civilization that once spanned this galaxy. For 10,000 years, we have watched younger species grow and develop, hoping to find allies worthy of trust." Images flowed through the mental link, glimpses of an ancient civilization, cities that floated among the stars, technologies that seemed to merge biology and engineering into artistic perfection. Then came darker images. Invasion, destruction, the fall of a galactic empire to the same angular ships now approaching Kepler Station. "The Devourers have returned," the Guardian continued. "They seek to consume all biological life, to transform this galaxy into a sterile void, suitable only for their machine existence. We have delayed them for millennia, but we are few and they are many." "Why now?" Maya asked. "Why reveal yourselves to us?" "Because in you we see the potential for something we lost long ago. Unity between diverse forms of life. Your species' capacity for cooperation despite differences gives us hope." Commander Thoth stepped forward. "What do you need from us?" The Guardian's attention shifted to include the entire command center. "We need you to be what you have trained to become. Leaders who can coordinate the impossible, tacticians who can find victory in defeat, warriors who fight not for conquest but for survival." Maya studied the tactical displays, her mind racing through possibilities. "The Devourer fleet is massive but operates as a single entity. If we can disrupt their coordination, create chaos in their formations..." Yes, the Guardian's approval was palpable. "You understand. But such a strategy requires precise timing and absolute trust between allied forces." "Which is exactly what we've been training for," Maya said, turning to address her teammates and the assembled senior staff. Every simulation, every exercise, every lesson in interspecies cooperation, it was all preparation for this moment. Alarms suddenly blazed through the command center as long-range sensors detected the first exchange of fire between the two fleets. The battle had begun. "Time to enemy engagement with Kepler Station?" Maya asked. 4 hours at current approach speed," Sergeant Vex reported. Maya nodded, her expression calm despite the magnitude of the situation. "All Allied forces, this is Academy Command. Execute Operation Harmony on my mark." What followed was the most complex military coordination in galactic history. Maya's voice became the central node connecting dozens of different species' tactical doctrines, her academy training allowing her to translate between incompatible military traditions and forge them into a coherent strategy. Altarian crystal ships provided long-range support with their energy weapons. Thrakari fast attack craft harassed the enemy flanks with hit-and-run tactics. Massive Gorlithian battleships anchored defensive lines while nimble Pixinian interceptors disrupted enemy formations. Human vessels, though few in number, served as mobile command posts coordinating between the diverse allied forces. The Guardian fleet revealed technologies that defied understanding, ships that could phase through solid matter, weapons that converted enemy vessels into harmless energy, defensive systems that turned attacks back on their originators. But even with such advantages, they were vastly outnumbered. "Enemy breakthrough in Sector 7, Crix reported. 3 Devourer dreadnoughts have broken through our defensive line." Maya studied the tactical display, seeing the pattern immediately. "It's a feint. They're drawing our reserves away from the main assault vector." She activated the command channel. "All units maintain defensive positions. Do not pursue the breakthrough force." "But they're heading directly for the civilian evacuation ships," Admiral Mitchell protested. Maya's expression remained calm, though her knuckles were white as she gripped the command console. "Guardian vessels, temperance and wisdom. Can you intercept the breakthrough force without compromising the main battle line?" "Acknowledged, young tactician. We understand your strategy." The next 2 hours were a nightmare of coordinated chaos. The Devourer fleet pressed their attack with mechanical precision, but Maya's combined forces adapted and responded with the fluid creativity that only biological minds could achieve. Every time the enemy found a weakness, the Allied forces shifted to compensate. Every advance was met with unexpected resistance from directions the Devourers couldn't predict. But the cost was terrible. Allied ships fell in dozens, then hundreds. Species that had never fought together before died side by side. their sacrifice buying precious time for evacuation efforts throughout the sector. Maya, Mora said quietly, her telepathic abilities picking up something others missed. The Guardian fleet is preparing for something massive. I can feel them synchronizing across their entire formation. On the main display, the organic ships began to move with perfect coordination, their formation contracting into a tight sphere around the largest devourer concentration. Energy began building between them, visible as streams of light connecting ship to ship. Final gambit, the Guardian's mental voice reached them. We will create a cascade reaction that will destroy their primary fleet, but we cannot survive such an expenditure of power. Maya felt her heart clench. There has to be another way. There is no other way, young leader. But our sacrifice will not be in vain if your species continues to grow, to learn, to unite the galaxy as we once did. Wait, Maya said suddenly, her tactical mind seeing a possibility others had missed. What if we don't need you to sacrifice yourselves? What if we can amplify your cascade reaction using our own ships as conduits? Impossible. Your technology is not compatible, not our technology, Maya interrupted. Our people. Every telepathic species in the Allied fleet, linking together to channel your energy cascade through biological minds instead of mechanical systems. The command center fell silent as everyone processed the implications. It was an insane gambit that had never been attempted, but it might allow the Guardian fleet to survive their ultimate weapon. How many telepathic species do we have in the Allied fleet? Maya asked. 12 confirmed, Mora replied. Possibly more if we include latent abilities in other species. Maya activated the fleet-wide communication system. All Allied vessels prepare for synchronized telepathic linkage. We're going to channel energies that could destroy us all, but it's the only way to save both our fleets and stop the devourers. What followed defied every law of physics and psychology and known science. Telepathic beings across dozens of ships linked their minds in a network spanning light years, with Maya serving as the central coordination node. The Guardian cascade energy flowed through biological neural pathways instead of mechanical conduits, amplified by the diversity of minds rather than the